What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we've got an unfortunate topic to talk about, and it's one that I've been avoiding for the last year because I just don't like to get negative on this channel. Maybe that makes me a loser, a little pathetic, that I try to keep it positive on this channel. And I've recorded videos in the past that I never uploaded ranting about Microsoft and their anti-consumer practices and just how much of a mess they've been over the past year in the video game industry. But again, I never uploaded them because I just didn't think they vibed with the tone of this channel. And how I like to structure my videos and what I like to talk about, it felt kind of out of place on the channel. But we've reached a boiling point, and I can no longer not talk about what Microsoft is doing, because yesterday, at the time of recording this yesterday, you might not see this video until a day or two after, but yesterday Microsoft as a company laid off about 9,000 employees, and a lot of them were in the Xbox gaming sector. For Xbox specifically, this meant projects like Everwild from Rare and Perfect Dark from Crystal Dynamics and The Initiative were canceled, as well as other projects like an unannounced one from Zenimax and an unannounced one from the original creator of Doom. There were also other layoffs to Call of Duty studios and Forza Motorsport studios, and I'm sure there are other smaller layoffs that we haven't heard about or haven't gotten as much press coverage as well. And before we get any deeper, I just want to say that the most important part of this is the people. It's not the IPs and the games that we've lost. It's not the fact that Perfect Dark isn't coming out. It's the fact that thousands of people working at Xbox no longer have jobs, especially in an economy as screwed up as this one. I pray that they all land on their feet, but the unfortunate reality is that not everyone is going to land on their feet, because this is such a brutal job market, especially in the video game sector, which is getting more competitive and more nasty and more embracing of AI and of smaller staffs and studios and all that stuff. So I pray that everyone impacted finds their way into another role, but it almost feels naive to say that with how cutthroat this industry is, and it just sucks to think about. And before we get into any of the kind of less important auxiliary stuff surrounding this and my perspective on all that, I want to say that none of this matters as much as the people impacted. And I hope that we can all remember that as we continue to have these discussions about Microsoft over the next months and years. And I'm sure more people will be laid off, unfortunately, and more bad decisions will come from Microsoft because they just seem to be in a really awkward spot right now. But I want to make sure we all remember that this is not about console wars. This is not about, who's better than the other. This is not about sales numbers and IPs and video games. This is about real people who don't have a job right now and don't know if they can put food on the table tonight. And it sucks. I don't know what to say. And it's hard to pivot into a video about why I sold my Xbox from that, right? But that's what is the foremost importance in this whole discussion, is the people impacted. So again, my heart goes out to all of you, and that's all I'll say on that. With all that said, let's get into the main point of this video, and that is that I am done with Xbox. I'm not just saying that in a theoretical sense. My Xbox Series X that is sitting right there is up on eBay right now. If you want to bid on it, for some reason, it's on eBay. There's 5 games included with it. Probably not that hard to find. The point is, it's up there, and in 6 days, I will not have legal ownership of it anymore. It will be shipped off to someone else's house. I cancel my Game Pass subscription, and I guess I'll see my digital game library in another life, because they're just sitting on a cloud somewhere. It's not like you can transfer them over to PlayStation. Wouldn't that be nice? And yes, I did replace it with a PlayStation, which I have right now. It's like making noise. That's kind of weird. So I did switch from Microsoft to Sony, but that's not what this video is necessarily about. This is about my ditching of Microsoft. Perhaps one day I will make a video going more in depth on my purchase of a PlayStation to replace my Xbox, but I don't want to make this a console war video because I think that is very insensitive to all the people who lost their jobs. This is not a sports game, right? This is a real life thing where a lot of people have been affected. So this is not going to be a thesis of why PlayStation is better than Microsoft. And to be honest with you, PlayStation is not much better than Microsoft in this regard. Over the last year or two, they've laid off a lot of employees. They've closed down a lot of companies. They've canceled a lot of games. It's not like Xbox is the only company doing stuff like this. And that's my first smaller point I want to talk about before I get to the main point is that I'm not saying that any other company besides Microsoft is infallible. I'm not saying that Microsoft is the only company that is guilty of doing anti-consumer and anti-creative practices. Sony, like I said, is at fault. Other companies like Ubisoft and EA and all the sort are at fault as well. Even Nintendo, who is pretty good about not laying off employees, does other things that are not very consumer friendly and not very, in some cases, creative friendly. But I think Microsoft's actions and damage to the video game industry over the last decade have been the most egregious example of these anti-consumer and anti-creative and just toxic practices that have made the video game industry as much of a mess as it is right now. And I just cannot stand idly by and watch that happen. So I'm done with Microsoft. And again, I just want to say it one more time because I don't want it to seem like I'm doing a console war thing or doing an anti-Xbox thing. They are not the only ones guilty of this, but they are certainly the ones most guilty of this. I would argue that at the very least. And that is why I have ditched Xbox, because while Sony is not much better, they are somewhat better, and I think they are at least somewhat committed to making games and supporting creatives, even if this generation has been kind of a mess for them too. And ultimately, I still have third-party games I care about and third-party publishers I want to support that don't make games on the Switch too, which is the other console I have. And that brings me to another small point I want to make, and that's that I'm not done buying Microsoft published games completely. I still want to support developers like Double Fine, who are owned by Xbox, and other developers like Platinum, who are making Ninja Gaiden 4 this year, and Toys for Bob, who is an unannounced project in collaboration with Microsoft, because I still believe they deserve the support, and I don't want them to get screwed over by this. And I hope that there is a light at the end of the tunnel for Double Fine specifically, which is under Xbox's wrath right now, although it seems like that partnership has been pretty beneficial for them. One of a few select studios that have benefited from all this craziness with Microsoft. But I'm not trying to act high and mighty and say that I'm completely boycotting the Xbox brand, because it's kind of hard to do that, but I am taking steps to minimize how much money I'm giving the company. Because before I was subscribed to Game Pass Ultimate, I was paying $20+ a month for that service, and that's in addition to whatever other games I bought on the Xbox store. That's no more. If I buy a Microsoft game, it'll be on the PlayStation Store or on the Nintendo Store. And at this point, who even knows how many more Microsoft games we're gonna get? Like, I think it's that dire for the company, and it sucks. But I'll be buying Keeper in October, and I hope you will as well. And then third, I don't want this to seem like I am making this about myself and my decisions. I just want to give my thoughts on Xbox's moves and how I am responding to them. That's what I like to do on this channel, is talk about what's going on in the video game industry and my sort of perspective and reaction to all of it. So that's what I'm doing in this video. I'm not trying to do the how do I make this about me meme about thousands of workers getting laid off, because I don't want to do that. But this is how I thought it would make the most sense to talk about it on my channel, because I am doing a pretty radical shakeup in how I consume this medium. But enough of that. Let's talk about why I am done with Microsoft, because yesterday all of their BS that has been building up over the past few years just reached a boiling point for me. I just can't take it with them and their practices that are bad for the video game industry. And again, these issues of monopolization and layoffs and all sorts of crunch, stuff like that, is not unique to Microsoft necessarily. But I think they are the most egregious example of all this stuff, and they emblemize what is so bad about the video game industry today. Whether it be seeing Tango Gameworks deliver a 3 million seller and one of the biggest breakout hits of the year in Hi-Fi Rush and shortly closing down that studio, or whether it be their embrace of AI and flaunting these stupid demos of AI recreated Quake and Minecraft that look as terrible as they are ridiculous and bad for the industry and its creatives, or whether it be the most recent string of layoffs, which were so messy for Microsoft that employees didn't even know if they were being fired. Some just lost access to Slack and were left wondering whether they were involved in these cuts of thousands of employees. And of course, Microsoft's lack of transparency and standard boilerplate PR messaging did not help with the confusion and the messiness of what was one of the saddest and most destructive days, I think, in the video game industry's history. And that's not to mention their investment in the IDF and the blood they have on their hands for for the genocide in Gaza, which I'm not going to get into here because I am not a geopolitical channel, but that's just a cherry on top of all the bullshit they've been involved in the past few years. I'm not selling my Series X solely because of these layoffs today, as terrible as they were. It was simply the last straw for me in terms of being not only an owner of an Xbox machine, but a consumer of their products, whether it be Game Pass or first-party titles or whatever third-party titles are sold on the storefront. Because again, other studios have layoffs, other publishers have canceled games. The console I replaced my Series X with, again, is no stranger to layoffs and cancellations. But Xbox's cancellations are happening more and more frequently, and in my opinion, are a lot more nefarious in their intent. Because Sony and Jim Ryan's pivot to games as a service and live service games was not a good idea, and it was reprehensible in how they basically blew up all the studios they created to make those games or asked to make those games. But at least there was a semblance of a strategy there, and if you twist yourself into a pretzel, you can kind of understand where they were coming from in pivoting to live service games in the wake of mega successes like Fortnite and more recently Marvel Rivals. Again, I'm not excusing those decisions, and everything about those moves were to make money, plain and simple. They weren't to support creatives, but at least their idea in creating all these live service games that never came to light were to create new games and new experiences and perhaps new IPs, though we'll never know because they never came to the surface. And one more thing I want to raise to clarify that point I'm making is that the layoffs that Sony has gone through in the last year or two were not to facilitate their pivot to live service. They were because of their failed pivot to live service. And I bring up that distinction because it feels to me like these layoffs by Microsoft are not a result of failure, but rather an initiative to downsize and to replace creatives and workers with AI and with living learning machines, or whatever the hell they're called. This, of course, has not been confirmed, but we've heard from some pretty reliable leakers and intel from inside the industry that Microsoft is making a pivot to AI in game development. They're, of course, not the first to flirt with this. I believe Level 5 has talked about using AI in coding or in making certain assets for their games, which I don't appreciate. I don't accept that, but it is to say that Microsoft is not the only company to be doing this. And I'm not trying to say that AI has no place in video games. Of course, other types of AI have been used for decades in video games, whether it be, CPUs or AI upscaling. This idea that AI is completely bad, I think, is a little bit misguided, but it's generative AI that we are so against. And if there is a sustainable path to using AI in game development, it's not to make assets, it's not to make art, it's not to plug in a prompt for a game into ChatGPT and ask it to make that game a reality. Maybe it's to do some of the legwork, maybe it's to do some of the processes that are laborious and not creative and not artful and not interesting. I'm kind of talking out of my ass here because I've never been a game developer, but if there is a use for AI, it is not on a large scale. It is not to replace workers. Could it one day be a tool in their toolbox? Perhaps, but it certainly is not going to be a tool in their toolbox anytime soon, and it's not going to replace the developers that make your games what it is. But Microsoft is using this big AI dream as an excuse to not pay workers, not hire as many developers in their studios, to downsize as much as they can. They can sell the future of game development as AI however they want, saying it'll streamline development or it will make games better or bigger or whatever. But the matter of the fact is that they do not care about that. Xbox cares about one thing, the green line going up, and firing a bunch of people and using a computer to do their jobs will save money, and that is the only thing that they care about. That's what really boils my blood with this whole thing, is if you take a risk and it doesn't work out and you have to cut ties somewhere, I'm still going to be very angry at you. I'm still going to call you out for it, but at the very least, it's a business. Shit happens, I guess. It's disgusting. It's terrible. It's what's wrong with our society and capitalism and all that stuff, whatever. But, it's what we live in. It's what we exist in. It's a business. But by all accounts, Microsoft is as successful as ever, specifically in the Xbox gaming division. They're making a ton of money, they're getting a ton of subscriptions. Phil Spencer every day loves to tell us how healthy the Xbox brand is and how they're more successful than ever. Heck, he said that frickin' line in the email he sent to the motherfuckers he fired. Phil Spencer wants to drill it into your brain that Microsoft is doing incredibly well and is as successful as ever, if not more successful than ever. But it's not enough. It's not enough for the suits at the top of Microsoft that just want more money and more money and more money. And so even if Phil is being truthful about the fact that Microsoft is as successful as ever and that everything is sunshine and rainbows over there in Xbox land, the status quo is not enough. It's not enough to stay put. That green line has to go up even more than it did last year. And so it's coming at the cost of thousands of jobs, and it's coming at the cost of a bunch of IPs that we care about. I think it all comes back to trust. There's no trust in Microsoft anymore. There cannot be any trust from developers. You're at constant risk of losing your job at Microsoft. Even if your next game does well, you're probably still going to get canned unless you're working on Call of Duty or Minecraft or Gears of War. And even the Call of Duty devs faced layoffs until yesterday. You're not even safe if you're working on Call of freaking Duty, which they had to go to court to buy. And so if you're a developer, how are you going to make your best product? How are you going to make a product good enough to save your job at Microsoft with the suits breathing down your neck, saying, hey, if this game doesn't do well, you know what's gonna happen? I think it was Satoru Iwata who said that developers who are worried about losing their jobs are not gonna make the best product. And how could you not be afraid to lose your job at Microsoft, who has fired 20,000 employees since the beginning of last year, I believe, and I don't know how many exactly were in the Xbox division, but I'm sure it is upwards of 10,000 at this point. In addition to that, there's also a problem in the lack of trust that the consumer has in Microsoft. How am I supposed to trust that the games you're touting in this roadmap that looks so incredible with so many games is going to work out the way it does? After every Xbox event, fans post the updated graphic with the upcoming games for Xbox, and for the last few presentations, Perfect Dark and Everwild were included in those graphics, and we expected those to come out eventually and be exciting releases, but those games aren't coming out anymore. So who's to say that Fable doesn't suffer another setback in development and doesn't come out? Who's to say that Halo, whose studio had to lay off people as well, doesn't flop, and that's the last we ever see of Halo? Who's to say that any of these games that Microsoft is saying are going to come out actually will? And again, this is secondary to the loss of jobs and the loss of quality of living for all these people who've been laid off. But if you're a consumer right now, and even if you're the most hardcore Xbox fan, how can you be in any way faithful of Microsoft delivering on their promises to you as a gamer? I sure can't, and it's not the main reason that I traded in my Xbox, so to speak, but it's one of the reasons. I was excited for Fable, and I was excited for the eventual next Forza game, but how am I ever to trust that those games will come out? Again, the main reason I did this switcheroo is because I just think Microsoft is a stain on the gaming industry right now, an absolute plague. But the lack of faith in them to deliver big releases is another reason why I've been looking suspiciously at my Xbox over the last year and a half. I mean, every year we say that the year following is going to be the big year for Xbox, and every year it feels like they sort of miss the mark. Even last year, which was touted as a great year for Xbox, didn't really have anything until the second half, and personally, I only really liked Indiana Jones, which was my game of the year last year. But again, that's from a studio that Microsoft bought years ago. And this year there have been a good amount of releases, and they've been fairly consistent in putting out pretty good titles, but who's to say that is ever going to happen again? And even then, I wasn't like super in love with a lot of their output this year, but that's besides the point. That's kind of sullying my point right now. What I'm trying to say is that I don't know how you could have faith in Microsoft to deliver on anything they promise, besides what they've dated already for 2025. Phil says we're going to get a new Forza and Halo and Gears and Fable next year, but I don't know how you can believe him at his face when he says that. And hey, if those games do come out, they'll be coming to PlayStation as well, so I don't need to worry about missing out on them if I really do feel like playing them. And I'll say it one more time, and I keep reiterating things, so this video is probably a mess, but this is secondary to the loss of jobs, to the loss of creatives, to the brain drain that is going on in the industry right now, where we've lost so many talented developers and artists from this medium. But it is just another reason on this laundry list of reasons for why I am completely done with Microsoft, at least as a console manufacturer. Again, maybe I'll pick up a game from them every now and then. Again, I really do want to support Double Fine, but I can't say that I am ever going to buy a piece of Microsoft technology again. In fact, I can probably pretty confidently say that I will not buy another piece of Microsoft technology again. If we even get another piece of Microsoft technology again, I don't think that's a guarantee at this point. And again, I did switch to PlayStation in all of this. And if you want to call me a hypocrite for leaving a company that does a lot of layoffs and joining another company that does a lot of layoffs, I won't blame you. Please call me a hypocrite in the comments, because it's kind of true. But I have a lot of third-party developers that I want to support, and I can't do it on the Switch 2 because for some reason no one's putting games on that system besides Nintendo. I don't get that. I thought it was more powerful. Where is it, guys? God. That's a separate issue, though. The point is, this is no doubt a lesser of two evils, and I cannot stand what Microsoft has been doing to the video game industry. I'm not going to stand idly by and continue to pay for Game Pass and continue to use my Xbox in light of all of this stuff. And I think all of these recent layoffs were just the cherry on top for me of just not wanting to support Xbox anymore. And I want to end this with a little bit more of a subjective point, and it's that I have had a lot of affinity for Microsoft, well, not Microsoft, Xbox over the years as a brand, the Xbox gaming brand. I did not have an Xbox growing up. I had a Wii and a DS, but I would always go over to friends' houses and play, the 360 and eventually the Xbox One, and I just had so much reverence for those consoles and the games that came along with them. And eventually I did get an Xbox One X in, I think, 2018, and I had a lot of fun with it because as a Nintendo gamer for my entire life, I knew nothing else than Nintendo, and having not only next-gen graphics, but AAA experiences outside of Mario and Zelda was unbelievable. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And then Game Pass came out, and for a while it was the best deal in gaming, and it seemed like perhaps a future for gaming, the Netflix of gaming, something that could be a really interesting way to, make Xbox stick out from the crowd. But it's clear that however many years since they've launched that service, that it is a net negative for the industry. That is undeniable at this point. And it's sad to see how far Xbox has fallen, because again, not only did I have a lot of reverence for it when I was younger, and maybe that's nostalgia, whatever, but I still have a lot of love for, the developers and the creatives that work there and the IPs that Microsoft has a hold of, whether it be Bethesda with the Machine Games IPs like Indiana Jones and Wolfenstein, or ID Software with Doom, or Playground with Forza and Fable, or Gears and Halo, which used to be staple shooters for Microsoft, or all the rare IPs like Conker and Banjo and whatever else. Or again, Double Fine and Tim Schafer, who have made some of my favorite games of all time in the Psychonauts series. It's hard to think about turning my back on all of that and turning my back on not the company, I have no qualms about that, but the developers and the creatives and the IPs that I still do hold a special place for in my heart. But at this point, I cannot deal with it anymore. I am done with Microsoft. I am done with Xbox. So that's my video on the recent Microsoft drama. I literally bought this PlayStation yesterday, and I put my Xbox on eBay yesterday. That was not an exaggeration. I was just so fed up, so angry with what happened yesterday with Microsoft that I just could not deal with it anymore. So that was the decision I made. Tell me in the comments, how do you feel about this whole thing with Microsoft? Do you have an Xbox? And if so, are you thinking about selling it or trading it in or not getting an Xbox next generation? And if you don't, tell me what PlayStation games to play, because I guess I have a PS5 now. And again, I guess if you want to bid on my Xbox, no, I'm kidding. I'm not going to give a link or anything. That'd be weird. It's doing like weirdly well, though. So I guess Xbox still has some clout because my eBay listing is going crazy, which is good because makes me feel a little bit more secure in my decision, and it makes me a little less worried that I'm going to be like out $150 or something. I think I'm going to make back my money that I spent on the PlayStation, which is a good feeling because, I don't have the most money in the world right now after buying the Switch 2, so I'm glad I'll be able to come out even on this and also just divest from a company that I think does no good for the video game industry at this point. But again, let me know in the comments if you think I'm crazy, if you think Microsoft is going to bounce back. I don't know. This video has kind of been all over the place. I'm a little sick right now, but I wanted to get this out. So apologies if it's all over the place. Again, I didn't script it. I don't know. I'm just mad. I wanted to let y'all know that I am a PlayStation gamer now, not an Xbox gamer, but I'll still be the same content here. I'm mostly a Nintendo YouTuber at this point, so yeah, I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think about it. I can't do a fun outro. This topic just makes me sad. So, but it seems like we're getting a Nintendo Direct next week. So if you'd like to see my analysis and predictions of what we could see at that Nintendo Direct, I will link it right here, as well as I will link. That was not a good way to say that. I will also link my impressions of DK Bonanza because I played it at Target. So if you want to hear what I think on DK Bonanza from the roughly 25 minutes I played of it, make sure to check out that video. Well, actually, that's going to be in the description. What's going to be linked here with the direct video is my review of Mario Kart World. I had a lot of thoughts on that, some positive, some negative. So if you want to hear what I think about the newest game in the Mario Kart series, it's going to be linked right there. And again, that DK video is going to be in the description. So a lot of stuff going on the channel. I just want to close this video one more time by saying my heart goes out to you if you have been impacted by these layoffs and everything. It is just despicable and just terrible what has been going on in the video game industry writ large, but especially with Microsoft. And I pray that you fall on your feet and you find somewhere, because my goodness, this is just a devastating and terrible industry, and it saddens me, and it makes me really worried for the future of this medium. And I hope that we can come out the other side of this eventually a healthier and better industry and medium and art form, but boy, it is tough to be in the middle of this right now. So that's all. Until next time, I'll see you. Nope. But that's all for me. And with that all said, I'll see you guys in the next one.